The envelope felt heavier than it should have, considering it contained only 20 crisp $100 bills. I'm Brian Martinez, and I'm standing in the parking lot construction site in downtown Phoenix, staring at more money than I make in 3 weeks. Money that isn't mine, money I shouldn't take, money that could solve every financial problem crushing my family right now. Just this once, Brian, whispers the voice of Marcus Chun, the city building inspector who's become way too comfortable with these consultations. Your little girl needs those medical bills paid, right? Nobody gets hurt. The building passes inspection either way. This just makes the paperwork move faster. The paradox burning in my chest is this. I'm holding enough cash to cover my daughter Sophia's physical therapy sessions for the next 2 months, but taking it would destroy the very values I'm trying to teach her. My salary as a junior civil engineer is $3,200 a month. Our family expenses, rent, utilities, groceries, Sophia's therapy, my wife Maria's medication, car payments, hover around $4,500. The math is simple and brutal. We're drowning $1,300 deeper every month, and I've been watching our savings account bleed out like a patient no one knows how to save. I need to think about it. I hear myself saying, though every fiber of my being is screaming that there's nothing to think about. Marcus shrugs, tucking the envelope back into his jacket. You know where to find me. But Brian, think fast. These opportunities don't wait forever, and your situation isn't getting any easier. Driving home in my 10-year-old Honda with the check engine light that's been on for 8 months, because a $400 repair might as well be $4,000 right now. I replay the conversation that led to this moment. It started innocently enough. Marcus mentioning how some engineers supplement their income through consulting work, how the system was designed to help family men like me, how everyone does it. Everyone does it. The phrase echoes in my head like a justification I'm not allowed to use. At home, Maria is helping Sophia with her homework at our kitchen table, the same table where we spread out bills every Sunday like casualties of war. Try to figure out which ones we can delay without destroying our credit completely. Sophia's leg braces lean against her chair. $1. $200 worth of medical equipment that insurance covered 60% of, leaving us with a payment plan that feels like a mortgage. How is work, Poppy? Sophia asks, looking up with eyes that still believe her father can fix anything. Good, Mija. How was school? But as I watch her struggle to form letters with the fine motor skills that her condition makes challenging, I think about that envelope. $2,000. Enough to pay for 3 months of therapy sessions that help her write, walk, dream bigger than her disability allows. That night, lying in bed next to Maria while she sorts through medical bills and insurance forms by lamplight, I listen to the sound of our financial stress. The scratch of pen on paper, the quiet sighs, the calculator buttons pressed with increasing frustration. Brian, she whispers, not looking up from papers, Dr. Rodriguez called again. If we don't make a payment on Sophia's account by Friday, they'll have to suspend her therapy sessions. $500. That's all we need to keep Sophia's therapy going for another month. $500. That might as well be $5,000 given our current situation. I close my eyes and see that envelope again. The question that will haunt me for the next 6 months is this. How you feed your family's dreams when your integrity is the only thing you have left to sell? And more importantly, is it possible to survive, really survive, in a world that seems designed to reward the people willing to compromise their values for financial security? I had no idea that the answer would come from a man I'd meet in the most unexpected place, or that learning to live within my means would require not just financial strategy, but a complete reconstruction of what it means to be wealthy. But first, I had to discover just how far I was willing to fall before I found the courage to start climbing back up. The weeks following my encounter with Marcus felt like living in a house where the foundation was slowly cracking, and every day brought new evidence that collapse was inevitable. I threw myself into what I called Operation Financial CPR, a desperate attempt to revive our dying budget through sheer willpower and increasingly creative solutions. First came the side hustles. I started offering weekend drafting services, advertising on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. Professional engineering drawings, fast turnaround. The response was overwhelming and overwhelmingly low paying. Homeowners wanted complex plans for additions and renovations, but balked when I quoted fair prices. I found myself working 15-hour days for clients who wanted professional results at amateur prices. $50 for a complete structural analysis? Maria asked one Saturday morning, finding me hunched over my laptop at 6 a.m., working on plans for a carport that the client insisted wasn't that complicated. It's better than nothing, I said, though the hourly rate worked out to less than minimum wage. The sleep deprivation began affecting my day job. I made calculation errors that required rework, missed deadlines that strained my relationship with my supervisor, and found myself drinking too much coffee to stay alert during meetings where my career advancement was being discussed without me in the room. Next came the expense cutting. We canceled Netflix, switched to the cheapest phone plan, started buying generic everything. I became obsessed with couponing, spending hours planning grocery trips around sales and discounts. Our weekly grocery budget went from $150 to $80, which meant meals became exercises in creativity born from desperation. Beans and rice again? Sophia asked one evening, trying to hide her disappointment. It's good for you, Mija, I said, though I could see Maria adding water to the soup to make it stretch further. The really desperate measures came next. I started selling things. First, the expensive tools I'd accumulated during my better financial days, then electronics, then anything that wasn't nailed down. My guitar, the one I played since college, went for $300. Maria's wedding ring went to a pawn shop for $150, though she made me promise we'd get it back. It's just temporary, I told her, though we both knew temporary had a way of becoming permanent in our house. But the moment that broke something inside me came during Sophia's birthday party. We planned a small celebration, just family, a homemade cake, a few modest gifts. I'd found a used bicycle on Craigslist for $40, spent a weekend fixing it up, painting it purple, her favorite color, and adding streamers to the handlebars. She loved it, but as she rode it around our small backyard, I overheard my brother-in-law talking to Maria. Brian's really struggling, isn't he? He said, not unkindly. I mean, the kid deserves better than a bike held together with duct tape and hope. The shame hit me like a physical blow. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right, and everyone could see it. That night, Marcus called. Hey, Brian, how's the family? How's that beautiful daughter of yours? She's fine, I said, though fine felt like a lie when I just watched her blow out candles on a cake made from a box mix because I couldn't afford the ingredients to make one from scratch. Listen, I've got another project coming up. Same deal as before, but this one's worth $3,000. $3,000, Brian. That could change a lot for you guys. I found myself listening more carefully this time. $3,000 would cover Sophia's therapy for 6 months. It would let us catch up on bills, maybe even get Maria's ring back from the pawn shop. What would I have to do? Nothing you're not already qualified for. Look over some plans, sign off on structural elements, maybe overlook a few irregularities that don't really matter in the big picture. Irregularities? Code violations that are more about paperwork than safety. Load-bearing calculations that are probably fine. The kind of stuff that slows down projects without actually protecting anybody. The rationalization was seductive if the safety risks were minimal, if the delays were bureaucratic rather than necessary, if my signature would just help hard-working contractors get families into homes faster. I need to think about it, I said again. Sure, but Brian, don't think too long. There are other engineers out there who aren't as principled as you are. After I hung up, I sat in my car in our driveway for an hour, watching our neighbors' houses with their perfectly manicured lawns and new cars, wondering how many of the people inside had made the compromises I was considering. The next morning brought an eviction notice, not because we hadn't paid rent, but because we'd been late 3 months running, and our landlord was exercising his right to find more reliable tenants. 30 days to find a new place to live, with first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit. Roughly $4,000 we didn't have. That night, I almost called Marcus back. I had his number pulled up on my phone, my finger hovering over the call button, when Sophia appeared in the doorway of our living room. Poppy, are we going to be okay? Looking at my daughter, this brilliant, brave little girl who trusted me to hold her world together, I realized that the question wasn't whether I could afford to keep my integrity. The question was whether I could afford to lose it. But knowing what I couldn't do didn't solve what I needed to do. We still needed $4,000 in 30 days. And I still had no idea how to make that happen without compromising everything I taught Sophia about right and wrong. That's when I remembered something my father used to say. When you don't know what to do, find someone who's been where you want to go. The problem was, I had no idea where to start looking for someone who'd learned to thrive with integrity intact. But as it turned out, he was about to find me. The financial planning seminar was the last place I expected to find salvation, mainly because I'd only attended to get the free meal. Building Wealth on Any Income was being hosted at the downtown library, and the flyer promised dinner and practical advice for working families. Given that our grocery budget was already stretched to the breaking point, free dinner sounded like a legitimate strategy. I slipped into the back row, planning to grab a sandwich and slip out before anyone could try to sell me investment products I couldn't afford. The room was filled with people who looked like they shared my struggles. Tired faces, worried expressions, the kind of quiet desperation that comes from loving your family more than you can afford to provide for them. The speaker was introduced as Miller Hayes, a retired certified financial planner who'd spent 30 years at J.P. Morgan Chase before leaving Wall Street to help working families build sustainable financial lives. He was probably in his 60s with gray hair and the kind of calm presence that suggested he'd heard every financial sob story imaginable. How many of you, he began, have ever been told that your financial problems would be solved if you just made more money? Every hand in the room went up, including mine. And how many of you have discovered that making more money somehow didn't solve the problems you thought it would? Fewer hands this time, but still plenty. Here's what 30 years of helping people with money taught me, Miller continued. Most financial problems aren't actually about money. They're about the stories we tell ourselves about money and the choices we make based on those stories. During the break, I found myself lingering near the refreshment table, partly for the free sandwiches, but mostly because something Miller had said was nagging at me. When he approached, I almost deflected and walked away. You look like someone with a question you're afraid to ask, he said, his tone neither judgmental nor pushy. I guess I'm wondering, I said, what you do when the math just doesn't work, when your expenses are higher than your income, and cutting costs and working harder aren't enough. Tell me about your situation. So I did, standing in that library conference room, eating a free turkey sandwich. I told a complete stranger about our $1,300 monthly shortfall, Sophia's medical needs, the eviction notice, and the envelope full of cash that could solve everything if I was willing to compromise my ethics. Miller listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding, never once making me feel like my struggles were unusual or shameful. Brian, he said when I finished, what you're describing isn't a money problem. It's a values problem disguised as a money problem. What do you mean? You're facing a choice between short-term financial relief and long-term personal integrity. But the way you framed it assumes those are your only two options. What if there's a third path? He pulled out a worn notebook and flipped to a page covered with research citations and handwritten notes. Dr. Brad Klontz at Creighton University has studied the psychology of financial decision-making for decades. His research shows that people who maintain their values during financial stress actually achieve better long-term financial outcomes than those who compromise their ethics for short-term gains. But how do you survive the short term without compromising? Miller smiled. That's exactly the right question. And the answer starts with understanding something most people never learn. Wealth isn't about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep and how efficiently you can turn what you have into what you need. He referenced a study from Harvard Business School showing that families earning $40,000 annually can achieve the same quality of life as families earning $80,000. Depending on their financial behaviors and resource allocation strategies. The difference, Miller explained, isn't income. It's what researchers call financial efficiency, the ability to maximize value from every dollar without sacrificing your core values. So you're saying I can make our budget work without taking bribes? I'm saying you can do better than make it work. You can create a sustainable financial life that actually aligns with your values instead of forcing you to choose between them and your family's needs. Miller paused, studying my expression. But it's going to require you to completely rethink everything you believe about money, spending, and what it means to provide for your family. What would that look like? It starts with understanding that you're not broke because you don't make enough money. You're broke because you're trying to live a $4,500 lifestyle on a $3,200 income. The solution isn't to increase your income through compromised ethics. It's to redesign your lifestyle around your actual values and resources. He mentioned research from the University of Toronto showing that families who align their spending with their core values report higher satisfaction levels than families who spend more money on items that don't reflect their priorities. Your daughter doesn't need expensive therapy sessions, Miller continued. She needs therapy. Your family doesn't need a perfect house in a perfect neighborhood. You need safe, stable housing. Once you understand the difference between needs and the specific ways you've been trying to meet those needs, everything changes. As the seminar wound down, Miller handed me his card. Brian, I don't usually do this, but if you're serious about finding a third path, one that doesn't require you to choose between your ethics and your family's welfare, I'd be willing to work with you. I can't afford to pay for financial planning right now. I'm not talking about traditional financial planning. I'm talking about what I call integrity-based wealth building. And for someone in your situation, doing it right is more important than paying me to help you do it wrong. Driving home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope that wasn't attached to moral compromise. For the first time since Marcus had shown me that envelope, I believed there might be a way forward that didn't require me to sacrifice my values or my family's future. But I had no idea how much work it would take to unlearn everything I thought I knew about money, or how transformative it would be to discover what financial security actually looked like when it was built on a foundation of personal integrity. The question was no longer whether I could afford to keep my values. It was whether I was ready to discover what became possible when I stopped seeing them as obstacles to overcome and started seeing them as a foundation upon which real wealth could be built. Miller's approach to financial transformation was unlike anything I'd encountered in self-help books or online advice columns. Instead of promising quick fixes or dramatic lifestyle changes, he introduced me to what he called values-based budgeting, a systematic method for aligning every dollar with our family's actual priorities rather than society's expectations. The first step, he said during our initial one-on-one session in his modest office, which I noticed was furnished with practical furniture rather than the mahogany and leather I'd expected from a former Wall Street executive, is conducting what I call a spending audit with integrity lens. He handed me a spreadsheet template and a research study from Stanford Psychology Department. Dr. Sonia Lyubomirsky's work shows that people who spend money in alignment with their personal values experience significantly higher life satisfaction than those who spend more money on things that don't reflect their priorities. The exercise was eye-opening and humbling. For 2 weeks, I tracked every penny we spent, but instead of just recording amounts and categories, I had to answer 3 questions for each expense. Does this align with our family's core values? Does this purchase support our long-term goals? Is there a less expensive way to achieve the same outcome? The results were devastating and liberating in equal measure. We're spending $180 a month on convenience foods, I told Miller during our follow-up meeting. Not because we prefer them, but because I'm working so many side jobs that we don't have time to cook. And what does that tell you? That I'm working myself to death to afford a lifestyle that's making our life worse. Miller nodded. What else did you discover? Sophia's therapy is costing us $400 a month, but there's a community center program that offers similar services for $50 a month. I never looked into it because I assumed more expensive meant better. And was that assumption accurate? I called them yesterday. Their therapist has better credentials than the private practice we've been using. The breakthrough moment came when Miller introduced me to what he called resourcefulness multiplication. Finding ways to meet our needs through creativity and community rather than just cash. Dr. Robert Cialdini's research at Arizona State University shows that people who view challenges as puzzles to solve rather than problems to endure develop what psychologists call resourcefulness resilience, Miller explained. They don't just survive difficult circumstances. They thrive by discovering capabilities they didn't know they had. Instead of taking side jobs that paid poorly and exhausted me, Miller helped me identify skills I could monetize more efficiently. My engineering background meant I could tutor high school students in math and physics for $40 an hour, triple what I was making drawing carports for demanding homeowners. But where do I find students who can afford $40 an hour? I asked. You don't find them. You create them. Miller helped me develop a proposal for the local school district's after-school tutoring program. Within a month, I was earning $800 a week for 12 hours of work that I actually enjoyed, compared to the $400 I'd been making for 30 hours of weekend drafting. The housing crisis that had triggered our eviction notice became an opportunity to reassess our living situation entirely. Instead of trying to qualify for another rental we couldn't quite afford, Miller helped me explore alternatives that align with our actual needs rather than our imagined status requirements. Your family needs safety, stability, and space for Sophia to thrive, he said. You don't need granite countertops or a prestigious address. Through a nonprofit housing program I'd never heard of, we found a 3-bedroom duplex in a working-class neighborhood for $800 less per month than our previous rent. The trade-offs were real: older appliances, a smaller yard, neighbors who work with their hands rather than behind desks. But Sophia loved the multicultural community, and Maria found her Spanish useful for the first time since we'd moved to Arizona. The most transformative change was psychological. Miller introduced me to research from the University of Melbourne showing that people who view their financial constraints as creative challenges rather than insurmountable obstacles develop what economists call scarcity innovation, the ability to create abundance from limited resources. Poverty, Miller explained, is having too little money to meet your needs. But feeling broke is often about having unrealistic expectations about what you need to be happy and secure. He had me create what he called a gratitude inventory, a weekly practice of identifying things we had that money couldn't buy. Sophia's laughter when I helped her with homework. Maria's pride when she successfully navigated a parent-teacher conference in her second language. The satisfaction of fixing our washing machine myself instead of calling a repair service. You're discovering something that took me decades to learn on Wall Street, Miller said. The wealthiest people aren't the ones who make the most money. They're the ones who've learned to derive the most satisfaction from the resources they have. The resistance came from everywhere. My own conditioning, well-meaning family members, a culture that equated financial success with moral worth. My brother-in-law, the same one who commented on Sophia's refurbished bicycle, couldn't understand why I was settling for less instead of doing whatever it takes to provide better for my family. Sometimes I wonder if you're being naive, he said during a family barbecue. The world rewards people who play the game, not people who insist on playing by rules that put them at a disadvantage. But 3 months into implementing Miller's approach, something remarkable happened. We weren't just surviving on our income. We were building an emergency fund. Not a large one, but $50 here and $100 there began adding up to a buffer that let us sleep better at night. More importantly, I'd stopped thinking about Marcus's envelope, not because the temptation had disappeared, but because I discovered something more valuable than easy money, the knowledge that we could build a sustainable life without compromising our values. The goal, Miller reminded me, isn't to prove you can live like a monk. It's to prove you can live like yourself, fully, authentically, and sustainably, regardless of your income level. 6 months after that first desperate evening, when I'd almost taken Marcus's bribe, I realized something that would have seemed impossible then. I was grateful for our financial constraints, not because poverty was noble, but because learning to thrive within them had taught me skills and revealed strengths that unlimited resources never could have developed. But the real test of everything I'd learned was still coming. And it would arrive in the form of an opportunity that would challenge everything Miller had taught me about the relationship between values and wealth. 18 months after my first conversation with Miller, I'm sitting in my supervisor's office at the engineering firm, staring at an offer letter that would solve every financial challenge my family has ever faced. Senior project manager, $85,000 annual salary, full benefits, company car. The catch? The position would require me to oversee projects in a division known for its flexible relationship with building codes and safety regulations. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Brian, my supervisor explains. The company likes your work ethic and your discretion. They need someone they can trust to keep projects moving smoothly, The old me would have seen this as vindication, proof that hard work and patience eventually pay off. But 18 months of learning from Miller has taught me to ask different questions. What does discretion really mean? What kind of smooth project flow requires someone known for their integrity? Can I have a few days to consider it? I asked. Of course. But Brian, don't overthink this. Your family deserves security. That afternoon, I called Miller to discuss the offer. We meet at our usual spot, a coffee shop near his office where we've had dozens of conversations about money, values, and what it means to build wealth with integrity. Tell me about your hesitation, he says after I describe the opportunity. It feels too convenient. A $50,000 raise right when we finally learned to live on what we make, and the timing, right after Marcus got promoted to head of building inspection. Miller nods thoughtfully. What does your gut tell you? That this is the same envelope Marcus offered me 2 years ago, just with a different wrapper. And how does that feel? Disappointing, but also clarifying. What I don't tell Miller immediately is how much has changed since I first considered taking a bribe to cover Sophia's medical expenses. The community therapy program hasn't just been more affordable, it's been more effective. Sophia's progress with therapists who specialize in serving diverse, working-class families has exceeded anything we saw at the expensive private practice. Our housing situation, initially a source of embarrassment, has become one of our greatest assets. Our neighbors include a retired teacher who tutors Sophia in reading, a mechanic who's taught me basic car maintenance, and a nurse who helped Maria navigate insurance issues that were costing us hundreds in unnecessary fees. We've discovered something, I tell Miller, that I never understood when we were struggling to afford our old lifestyle. What's that? Community wealth. The resources available when you're part of a neighborhood instead of just living in one. Miller smiles. Dr. Robert Putnam's research at Harvard calls that social capital, and his studies show it's often more predictive of family well-being than household income. The tutoring work I started as a financial necessity has evolved into something more meaningful. I'm now coordinating STEM education programs for 3 school districts, work that pays well, but also creates opportunities for Sophia to see her father as someone who builds up his community rather than just survives in it. You know what's interesting? I tell Miller, when we were broke and desperate, I thought our only options were to compromise our values or resign ourselves to poverty. But there was a third option I never considered, which was to get really good at living according to our values and discover that it's actually a competitive advantage. Miller references research from the University of Oxford showing that individuals who maintain strong ethical standards during financial stress often outperform their peers in long-term wealth accumulation, career advancement, and life satisfaction. Your reputation for integrity, he explains, has become your most valuable professional asset. The job offer you're considering is actually proof of that. They want to buy your reputation to legitimize questionable practices. The decision becomes clearer when I consider what accepting the position would teach Sophia. Not just about money, but about the relationship between character and success, between short-term gains and long-term consequences. That evening, I declined the job offer. Instead, I submit a proposal to start my own consulting firm specializing in compliance and safety oversight for smaller construction companies, firms that want to do things right, but lack the expertise to navigate complex regulations. Are you sure about this? Maria asks as I work on the business plan at our kitchen table. It's a lot of risk. Less risk than pretending I can separate my professional life from my personal values. I tell her, the first year of running my own firm is challenging but sustainable. I earn about the same as my old engineering salary, but with the flexibility to choose clients whose values align with mine and the satisfaction of building something that strengthens rather than compromises my integrity. More importantly, Sophia sees her father not as someone who sacrifices for his family, but as someone whose principles create opportunities for his family. When she writes a school essay about heroes, she doesn't focus on my financial struggles, but on my choice to help people build safe houses, even when other people wanted to pay him to ignore safety. The real measure of transformation comes during a chance encounter with Marcus at a community event. He's well-dressed, driving an expensive car, living the lifestyle I once envied. But when he tries to recruit me for another opportunity, I realized something has fundamentally shifted. You know, Brian, he says, there's still time to be practical about your situation. Your daughter's getting older. Pretty soon she'll want things you can't afford on your principles. You're right, I tell him. She will want things. But more than anything, she'll want a father she can respect. And I can afford that. 6 months ago, Sophia was accepted into a gifted program that will prepare her for engineering school. When she told me she wants to build bridges like Poppy, but bridges that help people instead of making money, I realized that the most valuable thing I could give her wasn't financial security. It was an example of someone who'd learned to create security without compromising his character. Today, our monthly income and expenses are almost perfectly balanced, not because we make more money, but because we become incredibly efficient at converting our resources into the life we actually want. We have emergency savings, a plan for Sophia's education, and something I never expected to achieve on a modest income: the confidence that we can handle whatever challenges come next without sacrificing our values. For anyone reading this who feels trapped between their principles and their financial pressures, I want you to know the choice between integrity and security is often a false choice. The path Miller showed me wasn't about making more money or spending less money. It was about getting really good at being myself and discovering that authenticity is actually the most reliable foundation for building a sustainable life. The crisis that once felt like it would destroy our family became the beginning of a life that's more aligned with our values than anything we could have achieved through compromise. And that alignment, I've learned, is the only real wealth that matters.